The internet is broken. We intrinsically see the problem with community and culture across the internet. And the reason is predatory advertising, fake news.
I mean, even just looking at the fact that Google can change the sort order of search results and basically completely change the outcome of something like an election.
Bitcoin gave us a chance to rethink everything that we have today and to create something that's not possible with the traditional internet.
I think probably the best part about Bitcoin that helps you solve these problems is that we have a really immutable open timestamp ledger.
Hey everybody, welcome to the CoinGeek Roundtable, episode 2. I'm your host, Kurt Wuckert Jr. from CoinGeek. I am joined by Luke Rohenaz, Connor Murray, and Jeff Chen. Let's talk briefly about each of your projects. Luke, if we can start with you, give us the brief on Tonic Pow, please.
Yeah, Tonic Pow is trying to solve something that's near and dear to the topic of conversation here, which is the broken state of the internet. What we're trying to do is basically bring advertisers and promoters together to make voluntary agreements instead of being a platform that kind of shoves ads down into people's feeds, whether they ask for them or not. It's the short version.
Beautiful. So in short, Bitcoin fixes this, and it does it with Tonic Pow?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of angles, and, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but, just having micropayments, the ability to simply fling, pennies around and things definitely opens a lot of opportunity. So.
For sure. I like it. Connor, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good. It's good to see you again. And
likewise.
The rest of you. So my name is Connor Murray. We're working on a company called True Reviews, where basically we're trying to use Bitcoin to fix the problem with online reviews. So there's a myriad of ways that it can help with it, but the most important way, I think, is tying online reviews to a valid proof of purchase. And so that way we can at least validate that even if the review itself is content-wise not great, it is linked to some kind of real tangible purchase. And then there's a whole other host of things we're working on, but I'll stop there.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And then Jeff Chen, good to see you. We met briefly in London. It was nice to meet you there. And let's hear about Maxdon Browser. I see you've made a couple of releases in the last couple of weeks. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Chen. I'm founder of Maxdon Browser. Actually, I'm also also a founder of the NB domain. That's another project that we're working on. From the browser, browser space, we saw the potential of BSV blockchain. We think there's a chance we can utilize the power of blockchain to reinvent the internet, because we saw so many problems with our current internet, centralized system, and also the people's privacy and people's data got lost. So I think it's time that we to act to reinvent the internet.
Beautiful. I love it. So our topic today, the internet is broken. I think that's something that is very clear to a lot of people. We've seen huge social network upheaval. We've seen, half a dozen social networks pop up in the last year and a half. There's even 3, 4, or 5 on BSV now that are competing with each other. So, but we intrinsically see the problem with community and culture across the internet. And the reason is predatory advertising, fake news. We get people, we're terrified that everybody on earth is a sock puppet. I recall Connor and I having a long conversation about what a civil attack is in a conversation with our buddy over on Hotep Jesus' podcast. And I've made a point of getting very good at understanding and explaining what a civil attack is, and now I use it all the time, even when inappropriate. And I actually think that's one of the major things that Bitcoin solves in a basic sense. But how does Bitcoin actually fix the internet? I think we talk about this all the time. The quote is Bitcoin fixes this, and I know each of you guys have a project and a product and some probably grander ideas about how Bitcoin fixes the internet. So, Luke, I'm curious how, how does the proof of work itself, which is another debate in and of itself, like what is the proof of work aspect of solving this problem, but how does this happen? How do we make it better, and how does Bitcoin itself make the internet better? Luke, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that's obvious to a lot of people is that there's an issue with the curation of information. That if you have a huge company where basically all the information is kind of flowing through that, they're able to curate what is seen by people and what's not seen by people. And what a lot of Bitcoin folks are interested in exploring is how do we just kind of have protocols where people can write information to chain to express certain sentiments that don't have this intermediary, that don't have somebody in between that can say, no, that's not a valid sentiment, or that's an especially valid sentiment. Let's raise that to the top. I mean, even just looking at the fact that Google can change the sort order of search results, and basically completely change the outcome of something like an election, or the perception of a particular individual or industry. There's just a tremendous amount of power in this simple sorting algorithm, and the results of that. So there's a lot of interesting ways then that Bitcoin comes into play to try to solve that. So one of the early attempts at this sort of thing, and the social network stuff is a lot in the conversation lately. Some of the early attempts were at the social network landscape. You had projects like Memo.cash. That was kind of the first open protocol that anybody could build a client and kind of contribute information to that. The tipping aspect, you tip on a person. There's one big issue that I have with that, with the kind of deal of you're tipping directly to a person, and that is you have to have something to stop me from creating 1,000 accounts, and then using them all to tip my own other account to raise that value up higher than everything else. There's other interesting ways to deal with that people have been exploring. That's like where you get into 21E8 and Boost Pow and things like this, where the gist of it is you embed some kind of a puzzle into a transaction. Someone needs to do some amount of work on that puzzle in order to unlock the tip that's kind of locked up in there. It's kind of the simple way to look at it.
Sure.
There's another whole angle to all of this I think doesn't get talked about quite yet, but I imagine it will be a lot more, and that is the attestations and forming kind of this identity web from many companies that are attesting that your information is, truly who you are. There may be some other avenues to achieving the same result of at least giving you mechanisms to say, I want to sort this data in a certain way, but I'm going to basically filter that through these attestations from all these companies or entities that I trust, and that will help me come to a much more at least a sort order that I can trust. Maybe your sort order is different, right?
Sure. So maybe so are you talking sort of like a federated group of notaries, essentially? Like this is all good and valid information? Is that a
yeah?
fair way to summarize?
I definitely don't. I'm not the guy to say that I have all the answers to a lot of this stuff. I can see the mechanisms that we'll use to get there, and I think it's going to take experimentation and people trying different approaches. But I do think that there is a really strong appetite for real, true, accurate information, and Bitcoin is definitely a tool that we can use to approach that from a few different angles.
Sure. Actually, I think it comes down, and I agree, but my concern is always about curation as well. Like we can have all these great filtering mechanisms, but if there's some gatekeeper somewhere that says, I don't want this information about my favorite political candidate to come through to the top, so I'm just going to nix this right at the threshold. Is there a way for Bitcoin to fix that kind of thing? Connor, I feel like this would be a good one for you since you're eliminating Sybils in commerce.
Well, I think probably from that first part of the conversation, I think saying Bitcoin fixes this, obviously it's like a meme at this point, but Bitcoin is really a tool that enables us to implement new solutions to existing problems. I think the internet has broken incentive mechanisms for sure. But for the most part, the internet is still a valuable place to learn information. I remember along the lines of what you just asked about, I remember discovering Reddit in like 2009 or something, or 2010. And I remember being amazed. I'd never seen a website where I remember I read this, I was up at 2 a.m. reading this really long essay from some like little girl in India telling her experience doing something that was so foreign to me. It was the first time I felt like the internet was connecting me from myself to someone else across the world, in like a really valuable and meaningful way. So there are aspects of the internet that work today. It's just a matter of, like Luke just said, there's now a gatekeeper on Reddit, and they curate the content that you see, and that's an issue. But I could theoretically see a platform that's built on top of Bitcoin that acts the exact same way, right? So all because you introduce Bitcoin to something doesn't necessarily, it doesn't change automatically become this valuable and meaningful tool. But as a tool, you can implement things like attestation, and there's really unique identity solutions that you can build on top of Bitcoin that would allow you to like Luke, I think that idea is really awesome, right? Having some kind of curated list of reputable sources that you can curate content from, right? So I guess with all that said, I think probably the best part about Bitcoin that helps you solve these problems is that we have a really immutable open timestamp ledger. So for the first time in the internet's history, we have a way to say, at this point in time, I can establish proof of the existence of something, right? So in our example, and what we're trying to do, not only just, hey, I can prove I purchased a product, but what if we can start proving that, okay, I used the application of Zoom, I used it for an hour-long phone call, right? Zoom already kind of does this. Obviously, when you hang up this call, it's going to give you, a 5-star rating, and you can rate your phone call. So they have some kind of internal mechanism to validate, yeah, this person actually did have a phone call. But if we can open that up to the whole world and say, there's a lot of data involved in the fact that I just used this service for however much time, I clicked these buttons inside of the service, all that kind of stuff. And here's what I thought of that workflow, of that experience, right? So I think the most important part of Bitcoin is that we have a way it's open, and it's a timestamp ledger that we can utilize to provide proof of something. Whether what that something is, I think is up for anyone to imagine. But
for sure,
I can also have proof of like crap, right? I can have proof of like nothing really, and it's really not valuable to anybody. And Bitcoin didn't actually solve a problem that we needed solved. So
right, yeah, for sure. So Jeff, I think it's funny, we talk about all these things in a grandiose sense, but ultimately it's got to get fed to normal people, right? And that's where browsers come in. And so what do you think? How do we filter out all of that? I mean, you're the last filter, right?
Yes. From my standpoint, I think the internet is broken is mainly because the power is centralized to several companies. At the early age of the internet, the internet is created to give people freedom, of the information. But now with more and more big companies appear, and individual entrepreneurs actually get less freedom to compete with them because they are so powerful. But Bitcoin gave us a chance to build a system that to empower the individuals, to give them the privilege to use the data. Because now the data is all grabbed by the big companies, and users don't have their data, then we don't have the power to use it. So with Bitcoin as a system, we want to build a new system that built on Bitcoin. Then, because we can put the data on blockchain, that every small companies, big companies, they have the same chance to get the data and to work on the data, so they can better compete with each other and give users the best product.
Absolutely, yeah, more perfect competition, and then we all get to benefit from it. It's so much better than having to deal with one G Maxwell or another in charge of all the curation on Reddit and everywhere else on the internet, right? So let's move on just a little bit. We talk about these things. All of this sounds really utopian, right? We're talking about this is how Bitcoin solves these problems. However, we also have a cultural problem in Bitcoin. We're big blockers. I think of us as the real Bitcoiners, but there's a much larger group of people that are small blockers who really think Bitcoin is incapable of solving these problems. They criticize Bitcoin's limitation as an internet or as a databasing tool. They don't want it to be a server. They don't want it to really be anything but your Swiss bank account in your pocket, or buried in the backyard, or whatever Jameson Lopp is up to. And I have to ask myself again, are they completely wrong? Is it possible to make absolutely consumer level simple people accidentally using products to create value in their real lives? Because I think that's what's really important for these meta-net applications to become really used by people, is for them to just be two steps to working in a retail situation or on the internet, or whatever else, rather than all of this key management and everything else that some of the small blockers will criticize and say this is a bad tool. So I'm curious, why is Bitcoin a better tool than most people think it is? Why is it the tool that most people are not looking at? So, Connor, I'd like to start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I guess there's two parts to that, right? I mean, there's the narrative of the big block, small block debate, which we probably had 800 times over. I had it with you. I have my white paper that it's hanging on my wall right now, so I could reference that if we wanted to talk about why big blocks make sense. But I think we're kind of over that debate at this point. I think probably the more important part is that everyone says, well, we can't have petabytes and petabytes of data and it'll become centralized and blah blah blah. But as of right now, we have companies that handle multiple thousands of petabytes of data, and they're called Amazon, Google. All these companies already solve this problem, but the inherent problem is that there's no incentives built into storing that data, retrieving that data. It comes down to like some kind of basic SaaS model where, if I want to utilize Google storage for more than a certain threshold, I pay them some amount of money for that, right? So I think, like all things, the use of a blockchain as a data storage system is subject to economic realities, right? And that's why that's probably why right now you can't store a 10 gigabyte data on the blockchain for a penny, because no miner is going to take you seriously when you try to do that. I mean, I think we probably need to get away from this mind of thinking of like, can I do this? Can I not do this? Because we kind of take the internet right now as for granted as some kind of thing that's just there and it's provided for us. And while I pay like $50 a month for my internet bill, therefore I have access to all these certain things. But if we start using, Bitcoin itself is really just this combining of data and money. So if we really start thinking in those senses of, well, I have all this data and I can start valuing it down to the kilobyte, right? Or smaller maybe, then you can start utilizing the blockchain in that relationship of negotiating. Well, I'm willing to pay to put this on a blockchain, and here are the benefits that come with putting on a blockchain. But it doesn't mean I need to put everything on a blockchain. I think that like this debate keeps coming up even within the past week. But for example, I think with Unwriter's Ping Pao, or is it Pao Ping? Ping Pao, one of the two. I think
I've said it backwards on purpose too many times, and now I don't know.
Okay, Pao Ping. I think it's brilliant, the fact that he's built this, and now nothing is actually on chain until it produces economic value. And that's important because that means that someone without Bitcoin can come in and use the platform because they're not actually paying to put anything on the blockchain, but they are creating transactions, and you get a lot of benefits with signed transactions that aren't immediately obvious to the legacy Bitcoin world. So I think we're going to see a rethinking of this problem, because I'll give one last example. I know I'm kind of going off tangent here, but I'll give one last example of what if I build, for example, like an on-chain game, okay? And I want to have every move be related to a Bitcoin transaction, but by publishing that onto the blockchain, I could introduce like a cheating mechanism, for example, right? That would be a very perfect example where like I want to use Bitcoin transactions for my game, but I don't want every single thing that I do put on the blockchain for a very obvious reason, to prevent cheating. So you can have these things that are off chain and then settle maybe at the end some kind of proof that everything was fair and it all happened, right? And maybe like a payment channel type system. So there's going to be room for both of these systems to exist, whether you're putting everything on the blockchain or a hybrid solution.
For sure.
One
Luke,
really
it looks like
exciting.
Looks like you got something you want to.
There is. This is really important. This is huge, actually. I just want to celebrate for a moment the fact that we're now beginning to debate application layer instead of protocol layer.
Mm.
It's just an enormous shift. And this is where things start to pick up. It's great that there's different competing models for some of the same use cases. And, there are situations where one is going to outshine the other, and time is going to tell where those things are. You can imagine Palping getting tons of people, and it's very easy to kind of so the concern with something like Palping with the versus kind of the Twitch model of paying as as you're coming in and as you're participating, is the idea of, are you filtering out a lot of the nonsense? And if there's no friction, that's great for onboarding, and potentially doesn't really solve the other side of the problem, which is using the interaction, kind of having to have something there as a little bit of a gateway towards bots that just do bajillions of fake transactions everywhere. So there's merits to go around. There's lots to explore. There's lots of things yet to be uncovered, and also ways that I think that these networks are going to start to communicate with one another, and start to realize what I think is another huge untapped potential here, which is the shared application state concept. The fact that you can have a bunch of apps that are using a shared protocol, and the idea that Twitch has been on about, like, you could leave and go somewhere else and sign in, and all your followers would be there and everything else. There's in my view, immense value in that concept. So I very much want to see that come into existence.
Right. Well, yeah, competing business models, but if everybody's on the same database, there's interconnectivity that really hasn't been explored by anybody yet. So yeah, that's exciting. But back to the original point, I feel like we've drifted slightly. Bitcoin's use as that database, and most people don't think so. You can talk to the Ethereum people who have had a gas problem for the last month, and transactions are 50 cents to $5 for literally the whole last month. And Ethereum is pretty useless as an application layer, and I think it's the tool that most people would think of when they think of a blockchain. So if Ethereum's broken, like, what is stopping BSV from being broken? Is it really the right tool? And Jeff, I'd like your feedback.
Yeah, we actually have built some application on BSV blockchain, and we think the BSV has already proved that we can create the big blocks, right? It's already workable. The people don't understand is that even with the BSV is not about put a lot of unuseful data on the chain. It's also it always depends on users' needs. So when people put data on chain and pay for it, that means people need that data, and that works. And another one that people always complain about the big block is big block will have more centralized, will be more centralized. I always debate with some people that they said, the small blocks will be more decentralized than BSV. But I say, no, it's not that way, because things are difficult to increase. Even with BTC, they have all mining pools, and all the mining pools, they don't have a lot of mining pools. There's just a limited number of mining pools. So even if the mining pool is limited, you cannot have a super decentralization. No matter how many full nodes you have, full node doesn't do anything. Only the mining pool control all the transactions. So in that sense, it's the small block and the big block is similar in that concept, the decentralization concept.
Yep.
So that's one thing that it's a misunderstanding. Also, I think the BSV blockchain, we can really put data on chain and also use those data for the application. If the application needs those data, there's no problem, because we can build application that can utilize so many data to create some different user experience.
For sure. I'm curious, as far as Maxton goes, there's a lot of browser projects. I was a Brave user for I actually don't use it anymore, because it's literally just Firefox, and there's a monetization at the end of it all. But what is Maxton doing that's different than anybody else? And I'd like to go around and discuss each of your projects a little more in depth and how you guys are solving issues. But I'd like to start with you, Jeff. Can you give us a little more in depth about the browser?
Yeah, we are actually taking a different approach than other browsers. In the browser area, people mostly know that Brave use BAT token to. With Brave, the BAT is generally our incentivized way to let user to use the browser. But from our standpoint, we see Bitcoin with our much bigger bigger goal. And it's not just a cryptocurrency; it's a system. It's a structure, it's a system that we could use this system to build something that have much more better a big impact than our cryptocurrency.
Sure.
So what we're doing, we're trying to resolve several key issues with internet, starting with the domain system. The domain system is kind of say the entrance to the internet, because you always visit any website through a domain. And also domain system is the foundation of the internet, because we build the internet all on the domain system. And domain system is a centralized system that has a lot of issues that the centralized system has. For example, that people don't really own the domain. Actually, you rent the domain from those domain registers. You have to pay the rent every year to have your domains.
Right.
So we think we can resync all the internet from the bottom to the high level, and we're trying to build something kind of different than current system, not only from the technical standpoint, but also from the product standpoint. For example, we want to offer this domain as our permanent domain system for a user, which means you just register once, then it's yours for all your life. You don't have to renew every year. If you renew it, it's not yours, right? You renew anything, it's not yours.
You're renting.
So we want people to really own their data. So we want people to own their data with the new internet, and we must let user own their domain as entrance to the new internet. So
Beautiful.
we are working on building from the domain system. Also have a lot of new ideas about how we can build on the domain system to build decentralized websites.
Sure.
And those websites can have are very strong competition with the current website, and all this data are really owned by the users, not by the companies. Currently, if you a website on Amazon or on Google, actually your data is owned by them. They can take down your site and anytime they want. So we're trying to, there's some research we are doing. I cannot say that we find the real answer, but I think that the Bitcoin gave us a chance to rethink everything that we have today, and to create something that's not possible with the traditional internet.
Sure, that's awesome. Luke, let's cut over to Tonic Pow. So, in a basic sense, advertise on Bitcoin, right? But what's the deep use case here? Like, where do you see it in 3 years or 5 years, and how has Tonic Pow changed the world?
So, if you think of just the size of, I don't know the numbers offhand, but the size of the advertising market that's going through these platforms, and the way that the advertising kind of model works right now is lock up network effect, get a whole bunch of users in there, and then just shove ads into their feeds, which, there's a bunch of weird side effects with that. Like, one, locking up network effect behind one user interface anyway has all sorts of strange consequences. You hear people all the time complain about maybe not liking Facebook or not liking Twitter, but they still use it constantly. And it's not because they like those companies; it's because they have all their friends hostage, basically. Not hostage so much, but it's just not very easy to move around or whatever. Tonic Pow is very much about, we don't care about what platform it is. We can provide monetization avenues no matter where you're sharing your information, no matter what new system pops up. There's an avenue for somebody with some followers and who has built a following and some traction to monetize that presence. At the same time, there's all these problems with Coca-Cola doesn't like some particular YouTuber, and so they complain to YouTube, and now the guy can't earn a living because he's invested 4 or 5 years of his life into putting this all together.
Yeah.
And they just come over and pull the plug on him, which that doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. I mean, at the very least, look, let Coca-Cola say, I don't want to do anything with this guy, and let everybody else say, well, he's fine with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let people make those choices themselves. So really, we're just about kind of eroding that model and helping to kind of lubricate the avenues for other models to kind of pop up. And, for us, it's about, and the other good thing that I think that we can do to really help usher a lot of this in is, all the solutions aren't in what we do. It's in all of these different projects that are doing things on top of Bitcoin. Right? And we're in a position to really help bring a lot of new people in, because you can advertise being any kind of a business. It doesn't matter whether you're having anything to do with Bitcoin or not. The end goal for us is we hope to be able to let you purchase a campaign, put your own campaign out there with a credit card. You never even touch cryptocurrency in your life, but it's making micropayments to all of these other people who do know about it and are happy to earn it. Or even want to cash out, in some other coin. It's going to be cheaper and you're not going to get instant payouts. But if you really are die-hard Ethereum fanatic, eventually we'll let you even cash out in that if you really want to. It's fine with us. The whole network still runs on BSV.
For sure. I think that's important too, to be able to absorb other economies. You have to be able to interface with them, right? I think one thing about advertising on the internet is if I'm out and about and I say, hey, what a cool motorcycle, and then all of a sudden Facebook is showing me ads for my local Harley Davidson dealer, it always weirds me out. Is there a way? Yeah, I mean, does Tonic Pow, will it ever interface like that?
No. The whole point is we don't choose the ads. It's voluntary. So there's a big list of campaigns. A promoter shows up. They look through the list. They say, oh, this is applicable to my audience. I think I could get a good click-to-conversion rate. Now, in the future, we'll be doing a lot more things like the stuff that Connor thinks about regularly, which is reputation and things like this is very important. And if a person is giving you garbage traffic, for example, and they're posting it, they're following the rules, but they're not getting any conversions. They're not giving relevant context when they post links. All of these things should add up eventually, and the people who really are doing a good job should rise to the top. And it should be a voluntary negotiation. It should, the same way that a promoter can go on and look at campaigns and decide what they want to advertise on their feed. It should be the other way around. Advertisers should be able to look and see how well the promoters are performing and what their niches are and things like that, and actually approach them and say, hey, listen, I'll give you twice our normal payout rate if you will support and promote our product or our service.
Sure. That's awesome. So Connor, on to True Reviews. I actually think this is one of the best things ever, because I'm addicted to Amazon. I don't like shopping in public, so for me, reviews are crucial. And I don't know what it was, 3-5 years ago, I realized how does this 2-month-old product have 4,000 reviews? And then I realized, oh, it's this is manufactured in a plant in Bangladesh, and every employee at the plant has an account, and then now there's 3,000 positive reviews, but there's no way that they were using this tool in any way that would affect my opinion of it. So,
right.
How does True Reviews solve these problems in a little more, a little bit deeper fashion than explained earlier?
Well, so I mean, ironically, Amazon has actually solved the problem in a weird way. What they've actually done is they implemented their own verified review section for each product, right? So because Amazon controls the distribution of the product, they can say this user actually did purchase this product. Here is what they thought of the product, right? So, we released a product called Veritas, which is essentially just a backend API server that we want people to call into to essentially tokenize proof of something. I generalize it to proof of something because I think it's a little bit more versatile than what might be immediately obvious. But the reason why we came up with it was because we want any sort of merchant or point of sale system to be able to call into it and then essentially tokenize the proof of purchase, right? Essentially put the receipt into some kind of unique object that can then be tied to another transaction later, which would contain the online review, right? So our main focus is essentially to take what Amazon is doing right now, because they control this distribution mechanism and they control the entire database of who bought what, where was it, was it actually distributed to the person, all that kind of stuff. Well, as I said, at the beginning, Bitcoin's nature as an open timestamp ledger lets us make that available to anybody, not just if we are some central company that controls all these different mechanisms of getting a product from sale to delivery. I mean, in my ideal world, which maybe this is where the conversation is going to go, is like what we can't do today, but what I want to see in the future is, when I buy a product from an online retailer, I want to know the quality of the product when it gets into the shipping container. I want to know the quality of the product as it travels along these shipping lines, right? So what we're trying to do is create a really easy API endpoint for anybody to create some kind of token with an attached metadata object. So you can think of just like a JSON object that says as little or as much information about what you're looking to do as you might care to include. But the best part about it is that we can extend this not just to physical goods, but also digital goods and digital experiences. So, for example, if I watch Netflix, I could call into this API server at different points in the movie, so I could figure out how much of the movie did you actually watch. But it means also taking that control, because Netflix does this already. They already know how much you watch. They have all this data. They use it for their own internal purposes, but making it more open and allowing you to actually own them. So, for example, this is where I would see a potential, like, I want to work with other Bitcoin companies that are solving this problem too, is, okay, let's say I have all this data about my purchasing products or my watching tendencies or all this other stuff, allowing them to own it and then sell that to advertisers or choose not to, right? And then how much of that do we want to share with advertisers? So, for example, maybe I watched this movie, but I don't care to, maybe I want to earn money from advertisers for telling them I watched this movie, but I don't want to tell them at what time I watched it, how long I watched it, all those kinds of other things that these companies like really steal from us. And what we're really trying to do is build a lot of like backend infrastructure to make this really easy for other platforms to use. Even if you don't care about Bitcoin, but we could argue that for a cheaper and more open nature, we can provide you this product that you'd have to build yourself to maintain.
Right.
Hopefully we can utilize Bitcoin as this database timestamp ledger to do all of that really easily.
Sure. So how do we, and this is open, I want everybody to kind of chime in here. Like, how do we get there? We talk about these things. I said utopia earlier, and like all this is a little bit like, yeah, this is all going to be great, but there's some kind of missing link here because it's not immediately obvious to a lot of people. So how do we bridge the gap and start to get to, hey, we like, look at all these problems we actually solved in the real world, and my aunt used Bitcoin 30 times in the last month and didn't realize it, that kind of thing. Where's the bridge? How do we get there? What does the future look like? But what's that stepping stone? Go at it. Fight.
I think this is the biggest problem I have is it seems like right now you have a choice between waiting for other wallets to do things that would enable you to build these really complex use cases, or build your own wallet. And I definitely don't want to go down the latter route of building my own wallet, because I just see a whole host of maintenance issues there.
Yeah.
To me, that is the biggest thing. Like, you can build really hacky other solutions outside of the wallet to enable things like identity and reputation, right? There's a lot of like ideas around that I think are available today if you maintain the keys yourself to do so. I don't want to maintain any keys by myself. I think it's a whole maintenance nightmare. So to me, that seems to me like the biggest barrier for like a application builder is the wallets out there are really good, and it's just a matter of the key management with those wallets available to an application, and probably rightfully so. It's probably not an easy problem to solve, so I understand the hesitancy for an external wallet to enable this, but for myself, I see that as the biggest barrier is if you're building something, you have to make this really crucial decision, which I think has a large impact not only on where you put your focus, but also like security. There's a lot of considerations here. I guess I pose that question to you two. Like, did you see that problem?
Yeah, actually, we have that problem as well. Actually, I have our good news for you, because when we build our NB domain system, we have to create a different kind of transactions with a lot of features that current wallet doesn't support. Even the customized the locking script, the unlocking script, all this, or we also create a new bit identity protocol that people can attach identity to a transaction. And we also make this protocol our open protocol. Actually, we are working with some wallets. We're working with a Vault wallet or another wallet like Twitch Pay. We're working with them to implement this open protocol. And with those open protocol, our wallet will be able to create very different customized transactions that other applications need. Because we build application by ourselves, we also build a wallet by ourselves. So we understand the needs, we understand the pain point the application will have. So that's, and I think that will help the application developer to focus on their logic instead of trying to build a wallet, because there's so many wallets here. We don't have to build a wallet for every application, right? So I think that's something we are trying to help the whole ecosystem. The other answer for the question is, I think we have no choice but to build great product. That's answer to the question that how we can to create the vision, to implement the vision that we have. We have to create a great product that fill the people's needs, to really resolve people's pain point, not the pain point in our mind, but the real pain point the average user has. It has to go that way. It's no other shortcut, no shortcut. So we have to start from something very basic, and we have to understand the user very well. I think that's a step we have to take. And every startup company, our project in our BSV ecosystem to think of that for the average users, not you and me, not those and actually not those BSV fans, because they are not average users. So we want to put something that my mother, my wife, or all those people they can use. So I think that's a key, and we are trying to build something to achieve that goal. Through the browser, because people use the browser every day. If we can create something that the people can use and help use every day, that naturally people will adapt it. I think that's the philosophy we have.
Sure. What you got, Luke?
I think there are a handful of wallets. I definitely had to go the route of building my own wallet stuff early. At least some of the projects I started even before the fork, there literally just wasn't anything. So I did have to build the JavaScript wallet library and kind of do all of that stuff manually with the BSV library and stuff. Also, we do a lot of stuff in Go, not a whole lot of libraries and things that go with that. So we've had to do a lot of from scratch there as well. However, the way that I look at it as far as starting a new project is use one of the existing wallets. And what I think the existing wallets eventually need to do, kind of like what Jeff is saying here, is standardize so that the application, you can use any wallet and it will work. And you need standard ways to do that. Dean Little made BSV ABI, which does include some specifications for like proposals for a standard way that wallets could be communicating. I'm a big fan of that kind of approach. And I think it's just going to take time to get there. But in the meantime, the way I'm looking at it from an application developer is just use the wallet as a tool and don't worry like too much about that. And that will sort of, there will eventually have to be some sort of a standard, because otherwise we're just going to have 50,000 different wallet apps that we can choose from. And like this site only works with this wallet, this site only works with this wallet. That's going to get old fast. That's going to be obvious. That's a big problem. I don't think that we have a really good good browser extension wallet either yet, which is another way to kind of detach the wallet but still have it very connected. There are some security concerns with browser extensions and things, but this is why having a browser that's natively integrated with BSV is super, super powerful, because you can get rid of the security concerns completely and have an external wallet that starts to work. And if they even did that in a way to where there's some wallet standard, you could use another wallet, but it exists in this kind of more secure environment within the browser or something, who knows? There's new opportunities there.
I'd also want to add to just like, because it started off negative, but it's ironic that in BSV, all of the wallets are 8,000 times better than anything else in the cryptocurrency world as far as like so I mean that only from like a really forward thinking perspective. But yeah, I do want to shout out that like every wallet I have, my wife's grandmother uses Money Button every day, so that's cool, right?
Yeah,
that would happen with other cryptocurrencies.
That's and I think that's crucial to understand too. If you're coming to BSV from literally anywhere else and you expect to, okay, what do I got to do? What are the steps? It's like, well, depend. If you're not particularly technical and you want to participate in something simple, go to moneybutton.com or set up a hand cash wallet, and very, very easy, and you're ready to go. Like, you don't have to think much. After you've written down your seed phrase, or maybe you don't even bother because you're only going to move $8 around in a circle for the rest of your life. So maybe who cares? But I think that's a crucial point, is that is actually that stepping stone, and we're creating it. So what's the key, Jeff? This is one for you. How are we going to attract people from Firefox and Chrome and Brave? Like, why? What is the, if you're to bring it down to one thing, what's going to attract the normal person? Like, hey, switch to the Maximum browser.
I think you would say one thing, it's some data ownership and data freedom. I think that's something that would be attractive, because currently, people's data is always saved with some kind of vendor. It's not people themselves, but with blockchain, we have the chance that people really own their data. Mm-hmm. For example, if you want to write something and save it, for yourself, currently there are no good way to do it. Yesterday, actually, I come up with some new concept here. BSV can do microtransactions, and we know we probably can create something can do micro storage. For example, you save just 1K stuff on the blockchain, and you want to have access to this 1K information. Currently, you don't have any choice to do it, and no other company allow you to save 1K on their cloud, right?
Sure.
But with BSV, we can create something like that. You just have some great idea, you want to keep it. We'll create some small application on Maximum browser that allow users to save anything, small information on the blockchain, and have access to them anytime they want. Mm-hmm. I think that's some those little point we'll add together to get user from Firefox, from other browsers.
Right.
We're creating some dot, and we're connecting those dots together, create a very different user experience, and provide something that user cannot have with other places. Sure. To attract people back here.
Brilliant. I love it. It's funny. Yesterday afternoon, I'm not sure exactly when this will get broadcast, but yesterday afternoon, all of a sudden there were a bunch of Twitter hacks. In my opinion, it looks like some kind of a 0 day, and or somebody bought creds from a Twitter dev. That's what I think are the two plausible ways that this has gone down. But like 50 accounts now, major accounts for Elon Musk and some of the major Bitcoin exchanges and all of that. Last I checked, they had raised about $140,000 worth of BTC inside of a few hours,
which is higher than the bounties for disclosing bugs on Twitter, by the way.
Yeah,
interesting dynamic there.
There you go. So, does Bitcoin solve this problem? Yeah. We talk about Bitcoin social media. How do we stop these 0 day exploits and stuff? Luke, sounds like you got a whole bunch of ideas.
I was thinking about this yesterday, and it's like, well, I mean, this is something that Jeff's project, would be ideal for, right? So say, okay, you have MB domain, you have your domain registered on the blockchain, you have a browser that when you put in that thing, it's going to route but it's going to get the data from the blockchain as well, the actual website information that renders. Sure, it goes out and calls to APIs and everything else. But the interesting stuff here is a browser can validate signatures on the individual data level. So if somebody makes a comment on a social media site, the browser could actually be checking like the AIP signature on your comment to validate it. And if it's not valid, surface a warning just like it does with SSL. If you went to a website, you had the big red bar across the top, you're not going to buy anything. If you went to a tweet and the browser's flipping out, you're not going to send any BTC. Or maybe you will. Some people still will, just like they still do it with SSL. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. But it definitely can provide solutions here.
The other thing too is you can imagine, right now the problem of like certificate authority is relegated to some central service that you may not even have control over. So could you imagine maybe a scenario where Twitter has what ultimately is like a kill switch, where it's clearly something is compromised, but they can make a Bitcoin transaction because they don't need to rely on maybe something that's already compromised. They can use the Bitcoin network to implement some kind of, I've spent this UTXO. This is no longer valid for other people to use, and you might be able to stop a hack a lot easier as well. If I'm speaking a little broadly there, but not having to rely on your own server, which might be compromised, to stop a hack might also be a solution as well.
Yeah, actually, we have a solution for this problem. The problem we currently have is that they're using the traditional way to verify the user. The user will be verified on the Twitter's server. That give hackers a chance to break into your account. But with our new design, with our NB domain, we also can use NB domain as a login, a global ID, as I said before. Use the domain name as your account name, and then we can use the public key that's associated with the domain name to verify the user, which means the user will be verified by his public key and the private key within the user's wallet. That be super secure, then verify it on the company's server.
Sure.
So the first step is to stop the hack of your account. That's the first step. Then we can verify the data and other doing other security checks. But the user verification I think that's something that we could create some using blockchain, Bitcoin technology to innovate and create something different.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I would encourage anybody listening to this, look into how certificates are issued. The domain authorities and security certificate issuance is crazy. It's like something out of the Middle Ages. It's like a system that felt like it was established in the 1600s and for some reason is part of the internet. So,
and like, to maybe expand on my point, imagine if Elon Musk had a way, he can't get into his Twitter account, but he has some other mechanism by spending UTXO or something to lock out his account completely from anybody else, right?
Sure. Yeah, dead man's Twitch. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of tools there that aren't being utilized because it's on Twitter's server instead of the open public blockchain. And it's funny because a lot of these people pay lip service. I mean, Elon talks about blockchain projects, and Jack Dorsey was just showing pictures of his race car, I think yesterday, right before the hack. He was showing his Cash App Bitcoin race car, and he used the wrong logo also, which I thought was funny. He used the Thai bot logo instead of a Bitcoin B. But Jack's a little too rich to pay attention to those kind of things. So at the end of it all, I'm curious, if you were to define victory, like what does victory look like? When can we say, like, you know what, we actually won this thing? Like we changed the internet. We changed it for enough people for us to say that, you know what, Bitcoin solved this. We participated in some way. Maybe it's okay for me to semi-retire and be interviewed on shows about ways I changed the world many years ago or whatever. What does that look like for you? What's the thing?
I think it should be really, really hard to lie and get away with it. It should be really hard to trick people into believing fake information And that really is at the heart of all this. So whether that is the sorting order of a search result, or that's reviews, or whether it's the ads that get shown down to you, that's all potentially manipulated. So it's really about removing the essential points of control that shape all of this perception.
I like it. Jeff, how about you? When do you retire and say you won?
I think if we can somehow change the people's mindset, when people want to save some data, the first thing they think is to save on blockchain. That's if people start to think that way, I would say we have we have really changed the world and kind of say a victory.
Sure. What do you think, Connor?
I'd probably even expand on that further and say, what probably would be real victory is if their data is interfacing with the blockchain, but they have, just like people have absolutely zero clue how the internet works, but they use it daily. Which I think, as we've had this conversation, that's in some ways part of the problem. People don't understand the predatory roles that Facebook, Twitter, all these other companies play, right? So the challenge that we have is, okay, you have two routes. Number one would be, well, let's explain to them how predatory and bad all these companies are, and explain to them, well, okay, there's this other solution, here's why it's better, and all the other kind of stuff. Or you build a product that works around those other predatory solutions, and it provides something new of value to users that makes them want to make the switch from this legacy product to the new Bitcoin product, right? I think that is the route we should be taking. But victory to me, I heard Craig say this a long time ago, and I've stuck with me, is like, he won't be happy until 5 to 6 billion people on Earth are contributing to Bitcoin transactions on the blockchain, right? I think
baby steps.
yeah, really. Well, he did. To be fair, he said the first 5 billion are easier than the last 1 billion. So maybe I'll stop at 5 billion. But I think the important thing is, like, we, especially in the larger cryptocurrency world, everyone says, well, we need to get all these people. We need to bank the unbanked and all the other stuff. It's not necessarily that. It's bringing the world economy into what ultimately is free trade. Bitcoin to me is the epitome of free trade, and bringing the world economy into that is so important that it would be hard not to be invested in this ecosystem until that happened, because it's just so interesting to me.
Absolutely. I think that's a common theme. If I were to take away anything from even just the last few years of this discussion about BSV, it's exactly that Bitcoin is for everybody, and that everybody should be able to easily communicate, transact, do business, start a company on chain and participate. And I think you guys are really doing the work necessary. It's awesome to see just all of these simple problems that, like you said, Connor, people don't even know they exist. People don't know why they're being, they don't even realize they've been under a civil attack for years. And showing it to them is a little scary, and there's some pushback. But I think you guys are really doing the important work to take that away, to insulate people from it by also giving them power to own their data, and maybe not even have them be aware that they have been liberated by Bitcoin. So that's really exciting stuff, and I'm really grateful for all of your time. Is there a key takeaway or a shout out or anything you'd like to give to everybody? Jeff, I'd like to start with you for hi mom, and check me out here.
Yeah, I want to announce that we'll release the NB domain beta version next week. So I welcome everyone to try that out and help us to find bugs and help us to build the new internet. We can do it together.
I like it. Connor, Luke, fight over it.
Yeah, I would say from the Tonic House standpoint, everybody who knows who we are and what we're doing knows about toniccow.com and kind of advertising marketplace that's there. But I just wanted to mention that there's also an API for people who have their own businesses, their own apps, that want to design their own custom incentive systems. and we can help you do all that stuff. It requires you get in touch with us at this point. It will be opened up further in the future, but there's a lot of really exciting things that you can do. So anybody interested in that should definitely reach out to us on, Twitch, Twitter, Powping, wherever you can find us, or just go to the website and there's a drift icon down the bottom. You can just check us.
Cool. Connor?
Yeah, I might need to get in contact with Luke, but I'll actually give pretty much the same plug. We're really trying to work with other applications, or even any merchants or applications or anything like that, where you want to leverage this use of tokenizing proof of existence or proof of purchase in the blockchain, and really helping build use cases around that. So we also have an API server that's available privately right now, so you can get in contact with me on any platform that's out there, or email me. But yeah, I think I'm really excited about the potential use cases that are that can be built with what we're building. And also, if you want a job, let me know too. We would like to have more people. So,
like it. So thank you, Connor Murray, Jeff Chen, Luke Rohenaz. Really good to spend my morning and Jeff, your evening together. And everybody, please join us on the next CoinGeek Roundtable. We're going to keep these discussions going. Let's do a wave for the end. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.